Welcome, and thank you for clicking on this video. Today, we are checking out the EastCoast Guitars MSB short scale bass. This is potentially one of the best value-driven short scale basses on the market right now. It's not perfect, but could this be a Bronco bass killer or a slayer of Harley Bentons? Let's find out. So as I understand it, EastCoast Guitars is kind of like a house brand or is owned and managed by Andertons. And this is their MSB model. Presumably MSB stands for Mustang-style bass, but likely due to trademark type and legal issues, can't actually call it a Mustang bass, but you can call it an MSB. At time of filming, this is a new model for EastCoast Guitars. This is a 30-inch scale, short scale bass featuring a poplar body, maple neck, bolt-on, with what they are promoting as a Rosewood fingerboard. Electronic-wise, we have a precision-style split coil pickup with a master volume and a master tone. Other appointments, it has a really cool looking pearloid pickguard that matches the colors beautifully. And this bass comes in a variety of different kind of Fender inspired colors. Not quite Fender colors, but Fender inspired. Has a kind of a Fender-ish looking bridge, thumb rest, and open gear tuners. Well, let's check out some of the sounds of this bass. Let's start with the volume all the way up and the tone knob all the way up. Let's roll the tone knob down to about 70%. Let's roll the tone knob down to 50. Let's roll the tone knob down to 25%. And now tone all the way off or all the way closed. All right, let's now hear this bass in the context of a drum track. And we have 4 passes on this comparison track. In the first one, we'll have the tone knob all the way open at 100%, then down to 75. In the third pass, we'll have it down to 50. And in the fourth and final pass, we'll have the tone knob down to 25%. This way you can hear the different tonal variations from this bass. Here we go. please let me know what you thought of the tones by leaving a comment below. My assessment of this bass. Let's first talk about the fit and the finish. I gotta say the available colors for this new MSB model are pretty cool. I chose the Daphne Blue model because that type of blue and teals and greens are among my favorite colors. So I think it's a cool color, but as I kind of alluded to earlier, they're not quite Fender colors. These look a bit more on kind of the sun faded side, if you will, but it's still a cool color. And I very much like the fact that it comes with a perloid pickguard. Overall, the fit is pretty good. The neck pocket is pretty tight. Is it perfect? No. But for a 129-pound bass, it's pretty good. The neck finish is very smooth. It's kind of a semi-gloss finish, but it feels like a matte one. So from that point of view, I would actually say the neck finish on this bass feels better than the Squier Sonic Bronco, and it feels better than the Harley Bentons, the MSB from the Harley Benton as well. So this is a very nice feeling neck. The fretwork is actually surprisingly good. We're doing the glove test in front of the mic. As you can tell, there are no sharp fret ends there. And overall, these frets are surprisingly done very well for a 129-pound bass. Similarly, the nut is cut pretty well. The E string is ever so slightly on the low side, but it doesn't buzz. So overall, the nut is cut all right. In general, the hardware is okay. There's nothing special about the hardware. The interesting thing to point out, though, is the string spacing both measured and feels ever so slightly wider. And with the calipers, it came in at just shy of 20 millimeters. Now, that is slightly larger than a typical Fender bridge, which is 19 millimeter string spacing here at the saddles. Now, at first, I thought it was a bit of an optical illusion, but when I put a Fender-style bridge next to it, indeed, this bridge is ever so slightly wider. Have a look at this photo. Now, one small detail I do want to point out is the string tree they used here up at the headstock. Now, typically on most Fenders, if not all of them, the string tree is pretty short. And as a result, you create a lot of downward pressure on the D and the G strings. It's a string tree, it's supposed to do that. But for really, really picky players, and sometimes I will lump myself in that group, maybe not sometimes, all the time, sometimes that extra downward pressure does make the D and the G string feel ever so slightly stiffer and more taut, which might be a good thing, but sometimes it can create a bit of a feel difference between a D and a G versus the E and the A. Now, enter the string tree for the East Coast here. This is ever so slightly taller than the typical Fender string tree. And as a result, and I hope you can appreciate this through the camera, the D and the G string don't have such an acute break angle over the nut. So from a playability and feel point of view, I actually think all four strings feel quite even on this bass. Let's talk about this Rosewood fingerboard. The Andertons website has this listed as Rosewood, and I have really no reason to doubt that. However, if you look at both the hue, so the color, as well as the kind of texture of this Rosewood board, it looks more like Laurel than it does Rosewood. Now again, I'm not questioning the integrity of or the accuracy of the information on the website. I'm purely judging this based on appearance. This is a very light colored rosewood, but more importantly, it looks very dry. So it might need the good old-fashioned lemon oil treatment to kind of rehydrate this board back to life. Overall, the weight of this bass came in just a hair over 8 pounds. When I first picked it up and played it, it both looked and felt kind of heavier than what I typically would associate with a Bronco bass or a Mustang-style bass in this price bracket. So there is a kind of a substantial heft to it. Now, at first I thought it was just, kind of new bass syndrome and maybe I'm just not used to it. But when I actually put it side by side to my Fender Mustang, indeed, this body actually is ever so slightly wider and thicker. Have a look at this photo. Let's check out the balance of this bass on a strap. So it does have a tendency to sit a little that way, and the neck does have a tendency to want to dive a little bit. It is sitting a little more horizontally than I'd like it to be here in the playing position. So it is a little neck divey. Let's now talk about the sounds that are coming from this bass. There's only one pickup, but the great thing this bass has going for it is routed out for a precision split coil type pickup. So unlike the Squier Sonic Bronco, which has a pickguard made for a Stratocaster style pickup, and same thing with the Mark Bass Yellow. So if you don't like the sound of this pickup, it's pretty easy to swap it out for something else that might be in more the flavor or character of tone that you are after. So the good thing here is this pickguard and body is pre-routed out for a P-style pickup. So huge points there. In fact, that's still one of the biggest hindrances of the Sonic Squier Bronco bass. So big points for that one. Now about the sound of this pickup, overall, I would say it is a very closed, kind of woolly sounding pickup. To my ears, even with the tone knob all the way up, it's still kind of closed off sounding. Now, it's not like closed off in an offensive way. It's just if you're looking for a more open, kind of, dare I say, brighter, clankier type Fender sound, I don't think this pickup's gonna get you there. Now, could that have something to do with pot values, capacitor values? Maybe. I didn't actually measure the value of these pots, but I think the pickup overall is just a darker, woollier, more closed off sounding pickup. If I were to hypothesize a reasoning behind this, the whole East Coast brand is kind of driven towards providing affordable guitars for beginners or people just checking out guitars and basses. And I remember when I was learning to play, when I would try a super bright, zingy bass, I would actually almost feel discouraged playing it because my poor playing technique at the time would end up having the bass making pops and clicks and clanky noises and other high frequency stuff that, to me that's not a big bloomy bass sound. And it's only after kind of years of practice and improving my technique was I able to develop a rounder sound. With this, for a beginner, you do get kind of more positive encouragement right out of the box without some of that. So even with more limited playing technique, still sounds like a bass. And I think for a beginner, that might be a good thing. For a more advanced player or someone looking for a more open tone, however, this pickup ain't it. Now, another thing about the sound I want to point out to you, the A, D, and G string sound kind of fine on their own, but the E string, even unplugged and acoustically, the open E string has a bit of a chorusy, slightly out of phase sound. And let me demonstrate that. It's less noticeable if you really give the string a harder swipe, but if you play it lightly, you can hear that kind of metallic chorusy sound. And that is present even with the pickup off. So let's see if this will come across. So I don't know how much of that has to do with the strings, how much of that has to do with kind of resonant frequencies of the instrument kind of clashing together. It's hard to know. It goes away kind of in a musical context. So if you have other things happening, you don't notice it as you won't notice it as much. But on its own, this bass will lose some marks in that department. Similarly, on the topic of strings, these are what appear to be kind of full scale strings that were put on a short scale bass. I'm sure that's for kind of, economics and financial savings for the company, but less ideal. A few final nitpicky details. I took the pickguard and the thumb rest off, and unfortunately the cavity is not shielded. But the saving grace here is this pickup is very quiet and hum canceling on its own. So unless you play next to a lot of kind of VLTs, you should be okay from a noise point of view. Now, aesthetically, I think the volume and the tone knobs are kind of too far spaced apart. I think the volume knob should be a little more that way. So purely visual, I mean, it's not a deal breaker, but if you want this to be a perfect budget bass, that is one thing I would change. And similarly, the headstock, when I first saw it, it kind of gave me flashbacks of those kind of entry-level Samick basses from the 90s. Maybe some of you will remember what those look like. Put up a picture here. So this headstock is kind of like those 90s Samicks, kind of crossed with the Mike Lull headstock, but executed in such a way that, I don't know, I'm certainly not one to, I don't understand design and how it appeals visually to people, but I took a look at the headstock and then kind of went, don't really like that. So, but that's purely subjective. So I ordered this bass directly from Andertons, and I got the Hills bass at the same time just to kind of bundle on shipping. And it came to me in a box. There's no included gig bag or anything, it's just a box. But in the box you get quality control card and 2 Allen wrenches. The setup of this bass right out of the box has got to be one of the best out of the box setups I've had in a long time. The only thing I had to do was kind of lower the pickup height ever so. So overall, at time of filming, these are selling through the Andertons website for £129. So in Canadian dollars at the exchange rate of today's filming date, it would be about 240 Canadian dollars. At that price, this is a great value for an entry-level short scale bass. I mean, the Sonic Bronco costs, in Canada at least, probably $30 to $45 more, depending on where you buy it from. The Mark bass was about $100 more than the Bronco, so even more. The Harley Bentons, I would say this plays better than the Harley Benton. I like the way this plays. Now, compared to the Groove bass that I reviewed a little while back now, that I claimed was the best value short scale bass, I still like the Groove better, but for the price, this is one heck of a short scale bass. I think this is perfect for someone just getting into bass, so beginners, students, but also for people who kind of want to dabble in short scale basses and don't quite want to commit to a more expensive model. Give this one a shot and you might be pleasantly surprised. And I hope the models you get, if you decide to get one, doesn't have this kind of weird phasey sounding E string. Unsponsored video, that's just my thoughts. Please let me know what you think of this model. And thank you so much for checking out this video. Catch you next time.